I would love to see a piece on how your cameras evolved from NCIX to now and why you chose those cameras.
Oh, I can just do that now.
I'm planning my own indie video/podcast company and would like to avoid the obvious pitfalls. Red.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call the Reds a pitfall. I can speak at length justifying the Red purchase. We learned a lot.
Oh, yeah.
We learned a lot about just, production workflows and
huge infrastructure improvements happened at that time to be able to handle the footage, which is still helpful today.
Which we still use now. So we got ahead of what we needed at the time at our scale, but now that we've scaled up, we use a lot of the same processes and a lot of the same infrastructure, or very similar infrastructure. So anyway, back to, I started with a vlogging camera with just a microphone built into it. That was perfect for what I was doing at the time, because I've always said content is king. You should use whatever camera you have, and you should try to make the best content you can. From there, we used a handy cam that the NCIX boss gave his kids and they didn't use, so we adopted it. And then when we started Linus Media Group, I got a Sony FS700 knowing that it was 1080p today and that there would be a 4K upgrade in the future. That ended up being a long and winding road with various external recorders. I remember we had an Odyssey 7Q or 7 at some point. It was an external recorder that used SSDs because I was super determined to not use proprietary media. It looked at the time like, was it CFast that was going to... No, I think this was pre-CFast. I can't remember what the hotness fast media was supposed to be at the time, but there were other cameras like the Blackmagic Cinema camera. We did end up with one of those at some point for some reason. That used an internal SSD, like a SATA SSD. That was super cool. So the FS700, we had a couple iterations of external recorders, and then that... I've never really talked about this publicly, but that was stolen. Which was pretty upsetting for me because that camera had a lot of sentimental value.
It sure did.
For me, it went through a lot with us.
For all of us,
we had to get it firmware upgraded in order to support 4K, and we had to get I forget if we had external audio recording for that one as well. Anyway, from the FS700, we went to, I believe, I want to say straight to the Reds because there was an overlap. And then I think you know what? I might not actually remember. We might have gone for the slightly downgraded, not quite an FS7, or maybe we were shooting on Blackmagic Cinema cameras or pockets in the interim. Crap, I can't go through this. I don't remember everything. I thought I did. Anyway, we got the Reds, and that was very easily justifiable. We made a ton of content, not just about the cameras themselves, but also about all the different things that we learned about and workflow stuff, and just having 8K footage around to experience informed us about how useful it was and how valuable it was. We often used the higher resolution footage to punch in post without necessarily giving up visual quality. There were lots of things that were super great about those cameras, but we've moved on. We went to the Blackmagic 12K cameras that ended up being kind of a disaster because their low light performance wasn't very good, and the footage was even more difficult to handle. And then we, since then, have moved on to Sony, oh crap, I forget the name of them. Yeah, FX3s and FX6s. Are they FX? No, they're FX6s, Dan. You can see all our current stuff in the Gerald Undone studio tour that he did recently. And the reason that we like those is that they can take good audio into camera up to 4 channels, which is really useful when we have multiple hosts. The footage is pretty easy to work with. They're pretty reliable. They record to SD. Hey, Dan? At some point, we were using something that had external USB-C SSDs, and we had just a ton of problems with those. We used a lot of A7Ss for a long time. Now we don't use those anymore because Sony has their FX3, which is kind of like a more professional A7S. Super, super boring to me, I guess, but I'm not really much of a camera gearhead. I just am like, okay, does this meet our business needs? Which has been, in a way, really interesting for me as well, because it helps me to see the things that I am enthusiastic about through that lens. So for me, a computer is cool. But then I have to step back and I have to go, okay, if it was a camera, how would I see it? Well, what's its function? What's its cost? Is there a long-term ROI? What can we do with our old equipment to reduce some of the cost of this upgrade? Blah blah blah. And it's not that I am less enthusiastic about computers now. It's more that it just helps me understand multiple perspectives when I'm looking at them.